Welcome back to my channel. My name is Erica, the author of the blog The Simple Home Place, and today I'm going to share with you how to sew a very basic basket liner. Now, if you've been here for a while, you probably know that I'm all about thrifting, and one item that I always look for when I'm at the thrift store are baskets. Usually you can find them for $3 to $6 at the most, where if you were to buy them in the store, they would be upwards of $20, $30+ dollars. Now, this particular basket was a pretty good deal. I think it was at $3 or $4, and it's fairly large. And what we're going to use it for is we have a bench in our living room, and I want to store library books and odds and ends that my kids have in the living room in there so I can just tuck it away. And so I wanted a liner for it. So the first step in making a basket liner for this particular basket, and any basket that is a square or a rectangle where the width of the top is the same as the bottom. This is not a tutorial for those baskets that are kind of angled up, so the base is smaller than the top. I'll probably make a video on how to make a liner for those types of baskets, but for now, that's what we're focusing on. So the first measurement that I did at the very beginning of this clip was to measure the height of the basket from the inside, starting at the bottom and then up over the basket's edge. And we want to determine where we want the edge of the liner to sit on the front. And for me, that was above the handle so that I could still use the handle if I wanted to. So that measurement for me was 9.25 inches. And then we're going to add an inch for the hem. So that would be 10.25 inches for me. And then what we'll do is lay our fabric out on a flat surface. I'm just using my table, and this fabric is a thrifted curtain panel that I found a while back, but the amount of fabric you need will be determined by the size of your basket. Since mine's fairly large, I'm using a pretty large piece of fabric. What we're going to do is take our ruler and measure that measurement that we first got from the bottom of the basket out. So I'm measuring from the bottom of the basket, the edge on the bottom, 10.25 inches, making a mark, and then I'm going to connect them all the way around the basket so we have a larger rectangle on the outside of the basket. Next up, we're going to take our ruler and create a diagonal line from the corner of the basket to the corner of that rectangle that we just created. And we're going to do that for all four sides. I'm just going to show you one side. Then what we'll do is I'm going to use 10.25 as my measurement. Again, use the measurement that you found at the very beginning. And I'm going to go from the corner of the rectangle to the left and make a mark at 10.25 inches. And then I'm going to go from the corner of the rectangle to the right and make a mark at 10.25 inches. Then what we'll do is we're going to connect all the lines to create a square that is in the corner of the rectangle that we drew. So I'm just going to use my ruler, go to the edge or the corner of the basket, all the way down to the edge of the drawn rectangle and create a line. Again, we're making a square in the corner of the drawn rectangle. And we're going to repeat this for all four sides. Now we're just about ready to cut everything out, but first what I'm going to do is inside that square that we created on each corner, I'm going to use this little gadget, and I can't remember what it's called, but I'll leave it linked down below if you want to check it out. They're really inexpensive. Anyway, I'm measuring a 1/4 inch, but I don't recommend that. Recommend doing a 1/2 inch from the outside of the rectangle in, and that's just a guide for when we're cutting it out, because we want to leave enough room when we're stitching the corners of the liner together so that it doesn't fit super tight, which for me it did, and so that's just a little adjustment that'll help make the liner fit a little bit better. So first off, I'm just cutting out the rectangle first, and then I'll go back and cut out each of the little squares. So here I just want to show you, I know the lighting is a little bit bad, but I'm cutting out the squares in each corner, and you can see the line that we drew, I'm actually going in a 1/2 inch all the way around, or the two sides that I'm cutting out. And again, that's just going to be for seam allowance, but I wanted to just talk through it as I'm cutting it out so you can see. So I left a 1/2 inch from the line that we drew to where I cut, and I made the marks just as a guide for myself. You definitely don't have to make the marks if you feel confident that you can cut out enough or leave enough for the seam allowance. And here is what it looks like when we are all done cutting. And now we're moving on to sewing. Now this is the easiest part. The prep is the part that takes the longest. But what we'll do is we're going to take basically 2 corners on either side of that square that we cut out, put them together, and sew them. I'm doing about a 1/4 inch. What I do is I line the edge of the presser foot with the edge of my fabric, and we're going to forward and backward stitch at the beginning and the end, and we're just going to go ahead and zip down all 4 sides. Like I said, this part is super easy. It really doesn't take very much time. And if you are new to sewing, this is a really great first project, or if you've done a couple projects, this just uses some very basic straight stitching. So it's a great way to practice your sewing skills, and like I said, I found this project to be really quick once you get everything cut out and everything. Moving on to the final step, which is to hem the raw edge that is on the top. So I've got the wrong side of the fabric facing up, and what we're going to do is fold the top raw edge down a 1/2 inch. And again, I'm using that little device, and I cannot remember what it's called, but I'll leave it linked if you want. They're only a couple dollars, and they're so much better than using the fabric tape measure. I just find it so much easier. Anyway, so we're going to fold the raw edge down a 1/2 inch, and I like to work in sections, so where in between the seams that we created in the previous step, and we're just going to go all the way down that one side, folding over at a 1/2 inch and using the iron to just lock in that fold, and then we'll go back and fold it down one more time, a 1/2 inch, and I like to again use this little tool and then press it and use a pin. And you don't have to use pins, but I like my stuff to be as precise as I can. It's never going to be perfect, but I just prefer to use pins. You don't have to if you feel pretty confident though. And again, we're just going to work in sections, go all the way down to the other seam, press, use your pins, and we're going to repeat this all the way around the entire basket liner. And then we're going to go ahead and do one final step at the sewing machine. Back at the sewing machine, we are just going to sew all the way around the top edge of the basket liner using about a 1/4 inch hem. Again, I just line up the edge of the fabric with the edge or the right side of the presser foot, and we're going to use a coordinating thread because you will see this one. The other, for the seams, it doesn't really matter, but for my fabric, I just chose white, but you'll want to use a complementing color or a color that's going to blend in with the color of the fabric that you chose. But we're just going to go all the way around, and as you can notice, I'm sewing it kind of inside out, and that is so that I can make sure that when I'm sewing, it's actually going into all of the folded pieces of the fabric. I find when I've tried to sew it with the right side facing out that you can sometimes miss some of that fabric on the back, and then you kind of have to start over again. And so this just gives it a nice clean look. So also make sure that your bobbin thread is the color that you want it to be, because that is the thread that's going to be showing on the outside of your liner. Here's how it will look when it's done. Again, you can't even really see the thread that I used, and that's because it blends in pretty good and the lighting's not the best. But now it's time to put your liner into your basket, and as I said, I made mine a little bit too tight, so don't do what I did. Use that 1/2 inch when you're making your marks in that square. It will make a difference and it'll be much easier to fit into your basket. But it turned out really great. Like I said, this is a really basic basket liner. You could add a bow, you could add some little ties, so many different things, but this works for what I needed it to be. And yeah, so I do have a blog post that goes with this if you want written instructions that you can print out. I will leave that linked as well as some of the materials that I used, but I hope you learned something new. I really appreciate you being here, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.